There's a quiet crisis sitting in millions of American driveways right now. These cars in our driveways are marketed as the symbol of American freedom. We move to the suburbs, buy a house, get a car or two in the driveway. That was the script. But everyone is asking the same question. How did the thing that's supposed to give us freedom become the thing that's making us broke? On paper, the economy isn't in a deep recession and cars are everywhere. But behind the scenes, Federal Reserve Bank of New York reports that auto debt has exploded past $1.6 trillion in 2025, which is about 65% increase from last 10 years ago. The same data shows that auto loan debt now formally exceeds student loan debt. And data from the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, BTS, indicates that transportation costs already account for approximately 15% of average household spending, ranking it as the second largest household expenditure behind housing. The most scary part is that the 90-day auto loan delinquency rate stood at 5%, which is dangerously close to the post-financial crisis peak of 5.3% seen in 2010. In this video, we're breaking down 5 structural reasons why so many Americans are now car poor and stuck in a system where you have to own a car to survive, but owning that car quietly wrecks your finances. By the end, you'll see exactly how all these 5 forces work together and make families car poor. Reason number 1, the negative equity debt trap. Negative equity is just a fancy way of saying you owe more on the car than the car is actually worth. You're upside down on the loan. In 2025, this has gone from a rare problem to a routine feature of the car market. In recent data from Edmunds, about 28% of trade-ins going toward a new car are underwater, meaning almost 3 in 10 people swapping cars still owe more than the trade-in is worth. The average amount of negative equity? Around $6,900. And a growing share of people owe $5,000 to $10,000 or even more on cars they no longer have. Here's how that plays out in real life. When you go to trade it in, the dealer says, "Good news, we can get you into a new car. Bad news, you're $7,000 upside down, but don't worry, we'll just roll that into the new loan." Now your new loan isn't just paying for the new car, it's paying for the old car too. That's how buyers who trade in with negative equity end up financing thousands of dollars more than the average shopper and carrying monthly payments around $900. While the industry average is closer to the high 700s. Negative equity is basically car poverty in a single number. It's debt that no longer has a car attached to it. And once you start rolling old debt into new loans, it becomes incredibly hard to ever be even again. You're not just buying a car, you're buying all your past mistakes at interest. Reason number 2, extreme loan terms and the illusion of affordability. Okay, if car prices are so high and people are rolling in negative equity, how are they still managing to buy these cars at all? Answer is longer and longer loans. Traditional financial advice says aim for 60 months, 5 years on a new car. Shorter for used cars if you can. But that's not what's happening in the real world. Recent data shows that the average new car loan is now close to 69 months, almost 6 years. And loans stretching to 84 months, 7 years, make up a huge and growing chunk of the market. So why are lenders and dealers pushing this so hard? Because as NerdWallet reports, stretching out the loan may be the only way to buy a car in today's inflated market, since it creates what we call the illusion of affordability. On paper, it looks like, hey, I can afford this now. In reality, you're paying thousands more in interest over the life of the loan, staying in debt years longer, and spending most of that time underwater because the car depreciates faster than you're paying down the principal. So extreme loan terms don't solve the affordability problem. They just spread the pain out enough that people will sign on the dotted line. Reason number 3, car bloat and the vanishing affordable vehicle. Now let's talk about the cars themselves. It's not your imagination, cars have gotten bigger and more expensive. Over the past decade, automakers have made a very intentional pivot, away from small, cheap sedans towards SUVs and trucks, which now make up around 80% of new vehicle sales in the US. Why? Because that's where the profit is. Bigger vehicles equals higher sticker prices, more room to add packages and options, better margins for the manufacturer and often for the dealer. So if you just want a simple, basic, affordable new car, good luck. The market has been engineered so the default choice is a $40,000 to $50,000 machine. Automakers have structurally shifted the market upward. They've made the default new car big, complex, and expensive, and they've removed many of the cheaper options from the menu. So if you need a car to participate in the economy, you're often forced into taking on a level of debt that used to be reserved for luxury purchases. Reason number 4, the explosion in operating costs. Even if you somehow manage to get a decent deal and a reasonable payment, you're not done, because buying the car is only half the story. You may notice surges in day-to-day operating costs, especially insurance and repairs. You are not alone. Kipling reports that total car ownership costs have surged from 49% in 2020 to 2025. Steep increases in auto insurance premiums have been a major contributor to the overall surge in ownership costs. The Insurance Information Institute reports dramatic premium hikes, with rates rising about 15% in 2023, 10% in 2024, and around 7% in 2025. Following insurance, repair and maintenance expenses represent the second major operational shock. According to CPI data, costs for auto repairs have swelled up 15% year over year in 2025. Reason number 5, structural car dependence. You can't opt out. All of this might be survivable if owning a car were optional, but for a huge share of Americans, it isn't. Data shows that 76% of American commuters use their own car to travel between home and work. This dependence is not a luxury choice for many. It is a critical need for economic participation. The American Civil Service Engineers reports that a massive 45% of Americans have no access to transit. This isn't an accident. It's the result of decades of policy decisions. Post-World War II suburban development, the interstate highway system, zoning rules that separate housing from jobs and shopping, massive investment in roads, but far less in trains, buses, biking, or walkable neighborhoods. So if you live in that kind of environment and you don't have a car, you're not just inconvenienced, you're shut out of economic life. So even when car ownership becomes financially punishing, people can't just say, okay, I'll sell the car and ride the bus. That's what we mean when we say demand is inelastic. People will keep buying cars and keep going into debt for them because there is no alternative. That's not just bad luck. That's structural car poverty. Unless something changes, both in how we build cars and in how we build cities and transportation systems, car poverty is going to keep defining the financial reality for millions of Americans. If this helped you understand what's really going on with the car market and why so many people feel squeezed, do me a favor. Hit like so more people see this. Subscribe if you want more deep dives on money stories. Also, drop what you're seeing in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.